Imagine you're standing in a courtroom in 1995. The whole world is watching. 100 million people have stopped everything they're doing to hear two words: not guilty. But here's the twist. Everyone knows he did it. This is the story of how America's golden boy, O.J. Simpson, became the man who got away with murder twice. O.J. Simpson wasn't born a controversy. He was born a star. Growing up in the rough projects of San Francisco's Potrero Hill, Orenthal James Simpson had every reason to fail. His father abandoned the family when O.J. was just 4 years old. As a kid, he suffered from rickets and had to wear leg braces until he was 5. The other children mocked his bow-legged walk. But something special burned inside this kid. By his teenage years, Simpson was running with a street gang called the Persian Warriors. He was arrested 3 times before he turned 18. Then came the moment that changed everything. Simpson met baseball legend Willie Mays, who looked him straight in the eye and said, "Kid, you've got talent. Don't waste it." Those words hit like lightning. Simpson channeled all that street rage into football, and suddenly the kid nobody believed in was setting records that seemed impossible. At USC, he became the most dominant college football player anyone had ever seen. In 1968, he won the Heisman Trophy by the largest margin in history, a record that stood for over 50 years. But even as O.J. dominated on the field, the warning signs were flashing red. Draft Day 1969 should have been O.J.'s coronation, but the Buffalo Bills were a disaster. They went 1-12 the season before and had no idea how to use their new superstar. For 3 years, Simpson struggled. People whispered that college success doesn't always translate to the pros. They were dead wrong. In 1972, everything clicked. Simpson rushed for over 1,000 yards for the first time. The next year, he did something that seemed impossible. He became the first NFL player to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season. Remember, this was back when the NFL only played 14 games, not 16. Simpson averaged over 143 yards per game that season. But Simpson's real genius wasn't just his speed. It was his ability to win over America. While other black athletes of the 1970s were seen as threatening or political, O.J. was different. He smiled, he joked, he made white America feel comfortable. When Hertz hired him for their commercials, showing him running through airports, it was revolutionary. He became the first black athlete to land a major national endorsement deal with a white company. "Go O.J. Go" became one of the most famous slogans in advertising history. Simpson was making millions, not just from football, but from movies, TV shows, and endorsements. America couldn't get enough of O.J. Simpson. Behind the scenes, though, something much darker was brewing. Simpson's first marriage to Marguerite Whitley was already showing cracks. Police responded to domestic violence calls, but nothing ever came of it. When their daughter Erin tragically drowned in the family pool in 1979, their marriage couldn't survive the grief. Then Simpson met Nicole Brown. She was 18, blonde, beautiful, and working as a waitress at an upscale Beverly Hills nightclub. Simpson was still married, but that didn't stop him. He pursued Nicole relentlessly. At first, it seemed like a fairy tale. The famous football star and the gorgeous young woman. They married in 1985 and had 2 children together. But fairy tales don't include what was really happening behind closed doors. Simpson was possessive, controlling, and violent. Nicole's sister Denise would later testify that she witnessed Simpson physically abuse Nicole multiple times. Police were called to their house 8 times for domestic violence incidents. The worst incident happened on New Year's Eve, 1988. Nicole called 911, terrified. "He's going to kill me! He's going to kill me!" she screamed into the phone. When police arrived, they found Nicole hiding in the bushes outside their home. She was beaten so badly, she was almost unrecognizable. Her face was swollen, her lip was split, and she had hand marks around her throat. Simpson had vanished, speeding away in his car when he saw the police coming. This should have been the end of the story. This should have been when America saw O.J. Simpson for who he really was. Instead, Simpson pleaded no contest to spousal abuse and got off with a slap on the wrist, 2 years probation and community service. The media barely covered it. Hertz kept running his commercials. Hollywood kept casting him in movies. America wasn't ready to believe that their hero was a monster. By 1992, Nicole had finally had enough. She filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. But what she really meant was that she feared for her life. Simpson couldn't handle losing control. Even after the divorce, he stalked Nicole constantly. He would show up at her house unannounced. He followed her on dates. He threatened the men she tried to date. She started documenting everything, photos of her bruises, written records of his threats. She even wrote letters detailing his abuse and locked them in a safety deposit box. Nicole Brown Simpson knew O.J. was going to kill her. She just didn't know when. The answer came on June 12, 1994. It started like any other day. Nicole attended her daughter Sydney's dance recital. Simpson was there too, playing the role of supportive ex-husband. But witnesses said something was different about O.J. that night. He seemed agitated, upset about the tight black dress Nicole was wearing. After the recital, Simpson went home alone. That's when he got a devastating voicemail from his girlfriend, Paula Barbieri. She was breaking up with him. In that moment, everything O.J. Simpson had been holding back exploded. Around 10:15 p.m., Simpson drove to Nicole's condo in Brentwood. What happened next would shock the world. Nicole was returning home from dinner with her mother and children. As she walked to her front door, she had no idea that death was waiting in the shadows. Ron Goldman, a 25-year-old waiter, had stopped by to return sunglasses that Nicole's mother had left at the restaurant where he worked. He was just trying to do a good deed. It cost him his life. The attack was brutal and personal. Nicole's throat was slashed so deeply she was nearly decapitated. Ron fought for his life, suffering multiple stab wounds as he tried to defend himself and Nicole. When police arrived the next morning, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Blood everywhere. 2 young lives destroyed, and a trail of evidence that led straight to O.J. Simpson. Simpson's blood was found at the crime scene. The victim's blood was found in his white Ford Bronco. A bloody glove matching one found at the murder scene was discovered at Simpson's house. Hair and fibers consistent with Simpson were found on the victims. The timeline was devastating for Simpson too. He claimed he was home during the murders, but limousine driver Alan Park testified that he arrived at Simpson's house at 10:25 p.m. to pick him up for the airport. Park rang the intercom multiple times but got no answer. Simpson's Bronco wasn't in the driveway where it should have been. Then at 10:54 p.m., Park saw a shadowy figure enter Simpson's house through the front door. Suddenly the lights came on and Simpson answered the intercom, claiming he had been home the entire time and had just gotten out of the shower. But the most damning evidence was what Simpson couldn't explain away: the Bruno Magli shoe prints found at the crime scene. These weren't ordinary shoes. They were rare, expensive Italian shoes, size 12, exactly Simpson's shoe size. Only 299 pairs of that size had ever been sold in the entire United States. Simpson denied ever owning a pair, but the evidence said otherwise. The DNA evidence alone should have been enough to convict him. The odds that someone else's blood matched Simpson's were 1 in 9.7 billion. You had a better chance of being struck by lightning while winning the lottery. So how did O.J. Simpson walk away from this mountain of evidence? The answer lies in one of the most brilliant and controversial legal strategies in American history. Simpson assembled what the media called the Dream Team, the most expensive legal defense in history. Led by Johnny Cochran, the team included F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, and Robert Kardashian. These weren't just lawyers. They were master manipulators who understood something crucial about the case. It wasn't really about evidence. It was about race. This was 1994, just 3 years after the Rodney King beating and the Los Angeles riots that followed. Black America was still furious with the LAPD. White America was terrified of more riots. Cochran knew exactly how to play this. Instead of defending Simpson, the Dream Team put the LAPD on trial. They painted the investigation as a racist conspiracy to frame an innocent black man. The star of their case became Detective Mark Furman, the officer who found the bloody glove at Simpson's house. The defense discovered old recordings of Furman using racial slurs and bragging about police brutality. When these tapes were played in court, it was game over. Here was a racist cop who had found key evidence against Simpson. Suddenly, everything looked like a setup. But the Dream Team's masterstroke came during one of the most dramatic moments in courtroom history. Prosecutor Christopher Darden made a fatal mistake. He asked Simpson to try on the bloody gloves in front of the jury. The gloves appeared too small. Simpson struggled to put them on, grimacing as if they didn't fit. Cochran seized the moment with 5 words that would echo through history. "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." What the jury didn't know was that leather gloves shrink when soaked in blood and repeatedly frozen and thawed. What they didn't know was that Simpson was wearing latex gloves underneath. What they didn't know was that Simpson may have stopped taking his arthritis medication to make his hands swell. All they saw was gloves that didn't seem to fit. On October 3, 1995, after less than 4 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict: not guilty.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in Count 1 of the information.
The reaction was instant and explosive. Black Americans cheered in the streets, seeing it as justice for decades of police oppression. White Americans watched in horror, convinced a killer had walked free. An estimated 100 million people watched the verdict live on television. Long-distance phone calls dropped by 58%. Trading on the New York Stock Exchange fell by 41%. The entire country stopped. Simpson raised his hands in victory, but his celebration would be short-lived. Because while he beat the criminal case, the families of Nicole and Ron weren't done with him. In 1996, the Goldman and Brown families sued Simpson in civil court. This time, the rules were different. There were no TV cameras. The racial dynamics were removed. On February 5, 1997, a civil jury unanimously found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. He was ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages. The same evidence that couldn't convict him criminally was enough to hold him liable civilly. But Simpson had moved to Florida, where state law protected his NFL pension and home from collection. The families have collected only a fraction of what they were owed. Simpson thought he had beaten the system. He was wrong. For over a decade, Simpson lived in relative obscurity in Florida. He played golf, appeared at memorabilia signings, and tried to stay out of trouble. But on September 13, 2007, Simpson's past finally caught up with him. In a Las Vegas hotel room, Simpson and a group of accomplices confronted sports memorabilia dealers at gunpoint. Simpson claimed they had stolen items that belonged to him. He was arrested and charged with armed robbery and kidnapping. This time, there was no dream team, no racial conspiracy theories, no gloves that didn't fit. On October 3, 2008, exactly 13 years after his acquittal for murder, O.J. Simpson was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to 33 years in prison. After 9 years behind bars, Simpson was granted parole in 2017. He died on April 10, 2024 at age 76 from prostate cancer. Even in death, Simpson remained controversial. Some mourned the loss of a football legend. Others remembered only the victims whose lives he destroyed. What shocked you most about O.J.'s story? Was it the evidence that didn't lead to conviction? Or the fact that it took 13 years for him to face real consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Pros to Foes, where we tell the stories of athletes who went from inspiring millions to shocking the world. Because sometimes the biggest falls come from the greatest heights.